guys, it's Ilsun 4K, and I want to welcome you all to the second annual Horrorween special, Horrorween 2, the sequel. Now, some of you might be asking, what's Horrorween? Well, Horrorween was a thing I did last year on my channel, here, IllTV, where if it's pop culture, you know it pops up here, where during the month of October, we celebrated horror movies that took place or take place leading up to Halloween. Not every horror movie that takes place on Halloween is the only movie that can be on this list, as if you think about it, Halloween, the original movie that took place on Halloween, didn't even start on Halloween. It was like a few days beforehand, and it always is, so let's not be too picky here. But much like last year when we started this off with the Grindhouse production that was actually Terrifier, a movie that did take place on Halloween and was actually gory as fuck, we're going to continue that onward this year with a director who's so polarizing in his work that most people love him or they hate him. There's no real in between. I myself don't mind him, but again, I'm talking about Rob Zombie and his movie that takes place on Halloween, 31. 31 is basically Saw mixed with the Hunger Games in a way to describe it. Because to be quite honest with you, I like Rob Zombie's work. Outside of Halloween 2, where he turned, Michael Myers into a mama's boy sort of, giving him this rip-off Jason vibe, I don't know. I think he does some pretty solid work. But this by far is my favorite movie out of the bunch. This movie is so gory, it's not even funny, it's over the top, and the visualizations of it, not just in the horror scenes, but the killer themselves, is something you really gotta see to believe. So definitely stick around as we talk about Rob Zombie's film, 31, and we're gonna talk about the movie, we're gonna talk about the review of the movie, and we're gonna talk about some other little tidbits about it. So make sure you stay tuned, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Remember, it's IllTV, where if it's pop culture, it pops up here, and we're celebrating Horrorween. So the plot to this film actually starts out very grindhouse-y style, and it shows a group of people riding through the desert inside of a van in the middle of the 1970s. If it sounds like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it kind of looks like that, except for being innocent teens inside of this van. It's a rugged group of vagabonds who look like they could take care of anybody who tried to handle them, as they're actually coming to be found as carnival folks, or as they like to say, carnies. Apparently these are the individuals who set up Ferris wheels, etc., etc., and they have their typical banter about how they can't wait to not do this anymore, and everyone talks about their plans, blah, blah, blah. Eventually at night, what happens is they get kidnapped by a group of people dressed as a scarecrow, and this is where it starts becoming a Rob Zombie film, way more than you might expect. These individuals are actually brought into a lair where it shows them being tied up, and from there we see a bunch of aristocrat Mozart era looking people. I'm talking with the white face paint and the big old school white hair. It shows them talking in a loudspeaker over these individuals that they've just kidnapped. That tonight they are taking place in 31, which is their once-a-year game that takes place on Halloween, fittingly, and ends up with them being released with 5 people against a bunch of challenges. These challenges, of course, are serial killers. Seriously sick serial killers, all that have the last name Head. First we meet Sickhead, who's a short individual about, 3 or 4 feet tall, and it shows him with 2 switchblades running around, dressed as Hitler with a swastika on his chest, but the crazy part is, he has a Hispanic Latino accent. So you have this guy dressed as Hitler with a Latino Hispanic accent, and it's just, the visualization of it is crazy. Now, as you can imagine, he kills one of the members kill him, and they go on to meet the next group of heads, who are these twin clown chainsaw brothers. That is exactly as Rob Zombie as it sounds, in the best way possible, and they eventually figure out a way around them. After this happens, the individuals who are running the event, the aristocrat-looking folks, are now going to call in the big guns. Yes, an individual named Doomhead. Doomhead is an incredibly talented killer, apparently, who has never failed them ever in their lives. So they call Doomhead after he's in the middle of having fun with a nice girl on a Halloween night. Innocent enough, as you can imagine. They go from there and ask him to come in. He says he'll come in for double his rate and decides that he's going to kill all the remaining people left with just 3. He immediately dispatches of 1 and kills them nonstop with 2 blades in the stomach over and over again. He then goes after the remaining 2 individuals, and I don't want to talk about what happens from there, because the ending to this, as to whether they survive and enough time runs out or not, is absolutely worth seeing for yourself if you haven't seen. But if you have seen the ending, I will tell you this much. Pretty well done. That was actually pretty clever. And that cliffhanger at the end definitely is a cool thing. Really, I gotta tell you, 31 is actually a very unique film in the zombie lineup. Yes, it has the typical cliches and tropes you might expect from the guy from his House of a Thousand Corpses affair, but this is really something unique and different. It's not part of a series, it never got a sequel, it's not a remake, and it's really its own thing. I mean, it's really got a unique vibe to it. And recently he went off and tried the Munsters, which I still have to see, but it's just interesting to see how he stayed in his comfort zone with this film, but went somewhere else at the same time. One of the things you'll notice right away in this film is Rob Zombie actually deters from his usual suspects of casting in this film by quite a good bit. He's got a few old friends in there, but nothing like he had before. It's really unique to see him try something new because this gives us a fresh take on the zombie universe. We don't feel like we're seeing the same people over and over again, that type of affair like they do in American Horror Story, but this whole cast is written amazingly. The dialogue between not just the survivors, but the survivors and the killers and the survivors is all very well written and very funny actually in a lot of instances, but it's still absolutely terrifying and mortifying. Some fucked up shit is said, as you can imagine, in dialogue in a Rob Zombie film. But again, this diverse cast of characters with everybody being new, both on the killer and the survivor side, and even the rich aristocrat folks, really was something that Rob Zombie needed to do in this film. But not even the casting is really what makes such a difference here. What Rob Zombie's doing is actually something a little more unique, whereas most of the time the killers are the rugged and raw ones, this time around the people who are being the victims and survivors that get kidnapped are kind of ruffians themselves, as you heard me say at the beginning of this video. They're a group of, like I said, 5 or 6 people, and there's some big dudes in there, alright? They're not messing around, they have a gun. It's something different from Rob Zombie because it's normally, innocents being terrorized by someone such as House of a Thousand Corpses, where no one really stands a fighting chance that much. Moving onward from there, the villains are really what steal the show here. First, I'm going to talk about these crazy aristocrat folks. It is wild to me to imagine that this is what happens when you have that much money in the facetious mind of Rob Zombie. Rob Zombie really took a unique idea here, and he almost took like a From Dusk Till Dawn vibe and combined it with the Hunger Games and Saw. And it's just so intense and so visceral and so gory the way that these villains operate, because they're just evil, but they're still enjoyable to watch. You almost root for them like you should with any good slasher, but there's like 5 or 6 of them. But if I'm going to talk about the villains, I have to talk about Doomhead. Doomhead is the one who stole this show 1000%. He shows up later on in the film, giving all the other characters their ability to build and become relevant to us before releasing the coolest villain I think Rob Zombie has ever made in his life onto the screen. Doomhead needs his own affair, to be quite honest with you, but Doomhead is the definition of a terrifying serial killer. We see how Doomhead is contacted as a normal individual, and then we watch him turn into the serial killer when he gets to the lair after being paid double his rate to come and kill people. That's wild. He just said, I'll come for double my rate, and they came. The presence of this man on screen is absolutely mortifying and terrifying. The ending with him and Sherry Moon Zombie is something that you have to see to believe, because their acting and on-screen chemistry really ties it all together and makes you just feel so much for it. Really, I'm not going to lie. Rob Zombie did a great job with this film. So, in closing, really, I see why people don't like Rob Zombie films. A lot of people at the time felt like he was a very one-note director, but in all fairness, even if you want to say that was true, he played that one note very well. Rob Zombie really fought to bring back the grindhouse style when it had fallen out of favors with audiences back when he was trying to get the original House of Corpses legendary lost cut put into theaters back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. It took him a while, but he finally found someone who bought it, and I don't know how edited it was, but apparently he fought a lot to bring that back, because like I said, grindhouse lost its appeal, things like Scream were popular at the time, blah blah blah. You see where I'm going. But realistically, you gotta figure Rob Zombie is the reason why the grindhouse kind of came back on its own. The original trilogy that started with the House of a Thousand Corpses was fantastically well done, in my opinion. Again, one of those people that wasn't sure if they liked it too much was a lot of people. A lot of people weren't sure about his first film and his second film, but by the time 3 from Hell came, everybody was pretty much on board. This movie is absolutely not his magnum opus, but a sign of how far he really came as a director, because he completely knocked it out the park with this one. This was such a fucking cool film to watch. Doomhead, like I said, even the critics who didn't like this film said that Doomhead was cool, and they said he felt wasted in a Rob Zombie film for how cool he was. Like I said, I don't agree with that, but I will agree with the fact that Doomhead is cool. And really, guys, that's my take on Rob Zombie's 31. Make sure you stick around all month long to check out the rest of Ween, which is of course a month-long celebration of horror films that take place on Halloween, right here on ILL-TV, where if it's pop culture, you know it pops up here. Also, make sure you catch me every Thursday night on twitch.tv/ILL-TV4K, streaming for the Total Terror-thon Thursday all month long, where I'll be playing horror games over on my Twitch. I can't wait to see you there. And remember, it's ILL-TV, where it's pop culture, it pops up here. Make sure you like and subscribe.
You're watching Ill TV, where if it's pop culture, you know it pops up here.